21st meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. I'm Tony Kemper, head of the DePaul School, president of our club. Please welcome Tom Williams, attorney and member of Stoll, Keene, and Ogden, and a primary influencer leader in Compassionate Louisville. Tom will deliver our invocation.
September 2012.
And I found it interesting that she was a founding member and the first president of the Young Professionals Association of Louisville, YPAL. Here's Cynthia.
I'm really nervous. I mean, it's bad form to fumble or mumble the intro for a public speaking expert, right? Okay, all right. The first line in our speaker's bio is this: Madison Cork founded Cork Communication in response to strong demand for her distinctive and impactful executive coaching and training style. So I am here to testify that that is true. We at the Leadership Louisville Center, many of you know we've been doing a whole lot with really just focused training and development, amplification of your individual leadership skills. And our commitment has been that we would go out and find people in the community who are spectacular, really people across the country who are spectacular, and that we would bring them to the Leadership Louisville Center, that we would weed out all the ones that were less than inspirational and only put on our docket the ones who were inspiring, enlightening, entertaining, and people who you would learn something from. And Madison is one of those people who hits our high bar. When we do programs with Madison, she gets rave reviews. People want to ask her back. So I'm really pleased to be here to introduce her today. Cork Communication clients include Fortune 500 and high growth companies, successful nonprofits, political campaigns, and media personalities. Prior to founding Cork Communication, Madison spent several years as a professor, both at the University of Louisville and at Bellarmine University. She is also an accomplished film, television, and stage actress, earning prestigious awards such as Ovation, LA Drama Critics, Backstage Garland, and Denver Critics, and all for excellence in performance. Madison earned a master's degree from the George Washington University and a bachelor's from University of Colorado. Her goal with every client is to help them gain higher returns from their human capital. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Madison Cork. Did I do okay?
You did great. She did great. Oh, thank you so much, Cynthia. I'm forever grateful to Cynthia and the Leadership Louisville Center. They have been incredible supporters and champions of myself and of Cork Communications, and I'm so grateful to be here with all of you today. As she said, our goal at Cork Communications is to help awesome companies like yours all across the great city of Louisville and our region get higher returns on your human capital. We understand that your number one goal is to make sure that you're getting higher profits and revenues, and in order to do that, you need your assets working for you at their highest and best. So when you need new software, or your technology needs updating, you do that, or your corporate cars need tune-ups, you do that. Well, your people need it too. They need to be adjusted and given opportunities to grow, and that's where we get to step in with awesome training and coaching. And one of our focus areas is on public speaking. So I'm super excited to share some insights with you today around that. And I'll tell you, one of the things that happens when I come and meet with you one-on-one in a coaching scenario, and I talk to you about the public speaking engagement you're about to embark on, more often than not, you come to me and tell me about an awful experience that you had somewhere along the way. And you tell me things like, oh my gosh, Madison, I had pit sweat so bad, I was bleeding through my shirt, or my mouth was so dry that my tongue felt like sandpaper. And I get it. We've all been there. And in order for you to understand that I truly do get where you are, I want to share with you about a moment in time early in my public speaking career. Chelsea Clinton and I are the exact same age, so it only follows that we were in high school at the exact same time. And as luck would have it, she and I were both accepted into a creative writing program at Wesleyan University for the summer. So prior to getting into the program, we all had to submit a short story, which I did, and I won this competition, which I was super excited about. And they let me know coming into the camp that at the first day there would be an assembly and I would be given this award in front of everyone, and I needed to dress up and plan a speech to accept the award. Well, I come from a single parent home, and my mother often worked 3 jobs at once, so having fancy clothes was not something we were accustomed to. So I went digging through her closet to figure out what I needed to wear to this ceremony. And I found a pair of pants that were a little too big for me, but I figured they would work. And I also found one of those thin little vinyl belts. Ladies, do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So I found one of these little belts to help me hold up these pants, and a blouse that seemed respectable. I show up to the ceremony. There are about 200 other teenagers sitting in the audience and professors from Wesleyan University. And I'm sitting on the stage waiting for my moment to give my speech to say thank you for this award that I've received. Well, all across the front row is a series of seats where Chelsea Clinton and her entourage are going to come in and sit to be a part of the ceremony with us. And I am extremely nervous, sitting there waiting, and that stupid little belt is driving me crazy. So through the entire time I'm waiting, I'm just fidgeting and fidgeting and fidgeting with this belt. Well, finally she comes in and takes her seat, and the gentleman walks to the podium and introduces me, and I bolster all the confidence that I have to stand up and accept my award, and I do, and I look Chelsea Clinton straight in the eye, and my pants hit the floor. One of the Secret Servicemen with her lunges in my direction. I assume thinking that I did it on purpose, which I of course did not. I immediately start bawling and run from the stage. So I share that story with you today to tell you whatever pit sweat story you have cannot compare. But also because I had a decision that I could make in that moment at all of 17 years old. I could let an awful circumstance, an embarrassing moment, define me. And I could decide that public speaking was a horrible thing and I never wanted anything else to do with it. Or I could rise. I could choose to allow that moment to send me forward to be the best that I could possibly be at something that not only scared me, but also had embarrassed me. And that's where I land today. Let me tell you why this matters so much, that you are excellent at being a great public speaker. Leaders, since the beginning of time, have understood that if you want people's buy-in, if you want them to join you in something, you have to be able to communicate effectively what your ideas are, what you're passionate about, what you're excited about. And in order to do that, you have to have the courage to stand up in front of people. Now, public speaking has changed a lot over the years. It used to look a lot more like this. Can anyone tell me what this depiction is of? The Gettysburg Address. Very good, the Gettysburg Address. Okay, so let's see if you can dust off your high school history. How does it go? How does the Gettysburg Address start? Say it all together. 407 years ago. Okay, right. And then we all lose it from there, but I'm proud of you that you know the first line. So this is how public speaking used to go. Politicians, preachers, people who had influence over the public would write a speech and stand up in front of people and deliver it over and over and over again. It was memorized, it was rehearsed, and it was rote. And that worked for a while. And then the world started to shift a little bit because most people started to become more literate and had access to information. And they no longer wanted things to just be regurgitated to them. They didn't want to just be told facts and figures. They wanted engagement. So the world of public speaking looks a lot more like this today. By show of hands, how many of you have seen or experienced a TED Talk? So much better, right, than 7 years ago. And we're highly engaged in these because there's a much more conversational style that takes place, where people are engaging us, entertaining us, and telling us great stories about what's going on in the world, inspiring us to action. Now, when I say the word conversation to you, most people go, I can do that. You just sat around your tables and had conversation with one another. And yet, the moment you're asked to stand up here and have conversation, whew, it's a whole nother ball game, isn't it? Well, let's look at what the research actually tells us about this. Over and over again, when research reports are put out on the top fears of the American public, public speaking is right at the top, with over 50% of our population absolutely hating it. Now look at this for just a moment. Speaking in front of a group over heights, financial problems, and death. Real research, people. Death! We are more afraid of standing in front of a room full of people than we are of dying. This is crazy to me. Why is this happening? Why are we so afraid of our peers? Well, there's an actual reason that this is happening. And I want to help you understand it today so that you can start to embrace this in a different way. Human beings are, in our essence, pack animals. We roam in packs. We have our tribes. We have our families. We have the people that we work with. We have the beautiful Rotarians that we're a part of. And the pack is a pretty great place because when we're together in the pack, we're safe. We're protected. We have fun. We take care of each other. We do the hunt together. We eat together. And that's a great thing. And when you're doing it in that collective, you feel confident. You feel comfortable sharing your ideas, sitting around a table, having conversation. But the moment that you stand up and separate yourself from the pack, it feels a lot more like this. Suddenly the pack doesn't feel quite so friendly because all of these eyes are on you and they're judging you and they're trying to make sense of what you're saying. And your animal instinct is to run and to pull back and to get away from this moment. Now, let's talk about what actually happens in the pack mentality of the people sitting in the room. You all came in here today, and you sat down, and I'm going to make an assumption that you're not horrible human beings. Is that a fair assumption? And because of that, my assumption is that you do not have next to you a bag full of rotten tomatoes to throw in my direction. You probably came in today with a certain level of hope and expectation that this would be a good experience, that you would hopefully enjoy what I have to say, that you would learn something from me. I can almost guarantee that most of you did not come in here today thinking, I hope this woman's terrible. I hope everything she says is awful. I hope her slides are a mess. I hope she fails. We don't think that way. As an audience member, we come in with this beautiful expectation. And you know that sitting there. And yet, again, when you're asked to stand up here, this is what you assume you're facing. This crazy angry mob is going to come after you. The pack is going to attack. Now, I just gave you a few examples about the mouth getting dry and the pit sweat and all of that happening, and that's part of the reason we hate it. But my strong suspicion is that there's actually another reason that this has happened in a lot of us. And it looks a little bit more simple, like this, where at some point in your professional career, you have been asked to give information away. So you're in a team meeting and you've been charged with a specific task and you've worked hard on it and you've put it together and you feel pretty good about it. And you're sitting or standing and you're delivering that information and it feels like it's going pretty well. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of your eye, you notice this guy right here, who has this look of disgust or distaste on his face through the entire meeting. And your brain starts telling you stories about how bad you are at this moment, and that he does not like what it is that you have to say. Let me ask you a question. By a show of hands, has anyone in this room ever been accused of having RBF? Cynthia, what is RBF?
Resting bitch face.
Yes. See how I made her say it instead of me? Unfair of me. A lot of people, when they are thinking or concentrating, tend to get a really intense look on their face. And when I first started training and standing in front of people, I would see this face as I would look out at all of you, and I would think to myself, this guy hates me. Everything I'm saying, he just does not like, he is not engaged with. And I determined that I was going to get brave. And I started going up to that one person after these meetings and talking to them. And inevitably, I kid you not, they would say things to me like, that was great. I learned so much from you. Thank you so much. And I'd say, really? Because you looked like you wanted to murder me the entire time I was standing up there. And they would say, no, that's just my face. That's just me thinking. So this story that you've told yourself, that you're terrible at this public speaking thing, probably has more to do with a long litany of false stories that are just not true. I believe everybody has the ability to be a great speaker, and what I want to give you quickly is a structure that you can rely on in order to do it well. Making structure your strategy will help you every single time. So I'm going to give you a quick 4-part structure that you can rely on. The first thing I want you to always do when you're preparing for a speech is I want you to come up with a great story to share. The right story is going to engage an audience over and over again. It helps people trust you, it makes them like you, you can make them laugh, you can make them cry, but getting a hold of them emotionally first is always the right place to start. The second thing I want you to do is tell people in the audience why they should care about what you're talking about. Decision-making brains in the room instantly sit and think, why do I care about this? Why does this matter to me? And you need to tell them pretty quickly why it does. The third thing I want you to do is give people 3 simple ways that they can engage with the information that you're giving them. Research again tells us if you ask people to do more than 4 of any tactic at a time, they won't engage. 1, 2, and 3 they'll do. When you transition over into 4 or 5, they check out on you. So 3 simple things that they can do. And then the last thing you're always going to incorporate in your structure is the data. Some level of research, some number that lets people know that what you're talking about is true and real and sincere. So for those of you that like to see it laid out in a simple pattern for you, what you have here quickly are the primary communication styles that exist in the world. I don't have time to go into all of them for you today, but I promise you this is how listeners hear the world. So getting to people's relational core first by telling them a story is essential. Going to their initiator second and telling them why it matters is great. Going to the directorial side of the brain and telling people how to engage. And then ultimately showing good data, strong data, that supports your cause. Analytical thinkers in the room will agree with me when I say you don't need all the data, right? You need the correct data. You need accurate data, and yet we consistently, in our presentations, overwhelm people with more numbers than they can ever possibly process. So that's the basic structure I want you to start using over and over again. Now, on the delivery side, there's a couple of key things I want you to do. The first one is based off of this awesome quote from Mark Twain, where he says, there are only 2 types of speakers in the world, the nervous and the liars. We are all nervous when we separate from the pack. And I'm here to tell you today that's a good thing. It is part of your body's kinesthetic energy telling you that this moment in time matters. I want you to begin to embrace that, because go with me for 1 minute. When you get into that nervous space, my assumption is that you start doing something to yourself a little bit like this. Stop it. Oh, why am I so nervous? Oh, and you get super frustrated with yourself and the nerves continue to rise. And in your assumption that the pack is going to attack you, guess who actually is? You are. You are literally attacking your body's natural process when you tell yourself to stop being nervous. So if instead you say, wow, I'm nervous, that's great. That means this moment matters to me. Thank you, body, for telling me that. Watch how it goes flying out the door, and all of that starts to dissipate. So embrace your nerves. The second thing I want you to do is work really hard to overcome filler language. We're all incredibly guilty of this, and there's a very simple reason why. Your brain is buying time to figure out what it wants to say next. And just like our brains are hardwired for story, which is why I want you to start there, we're also hardwired for rhythm. So when somebody starts doing filler language over and over again, your brain keys into that, starts listening for it, and guess what you're not listening to at that moment? What the person's actually saying. All your brain tunes into is the filler. So here's how you stop it. I simply want you to trust yourself enough to actively listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth as they are coming out. And when the impulse is there to say, just stop. Take a pause, take a breath, and say what you actually intended to say. Your audience will forgive you all day long for that moment of silence over the enormous amount of filler language we tend to use. The last thing I want to tell you today, and then I'm going to open up the floor to questions, is that the death of all great presentations is when you end with any questions. Because inevitably the room goes to crickets. Because nobody wants to be the first one. So a great presenter knows and understands that the entire time we are together, we are in this dance. We are in this conversation together. So I'm looking out for lovely people who are nodding their heads at me through the entire presentation, or who are taking copious notes. And when I'm done, instead of opening the floor up to God knows what could possibly come at me, I'm going straight to her. And I'm going to say, you looked really engaged in what I had to say today. Why don't you share with the room your thoughts? And instantly, I am now in control of my Q&A session. I have decided who I'm going to engage with and who I'm going to allow to begin to speak with me. It is a foolproof trick, and I highly encourage you to do it. The last thing I want you to do in this is it's okay to not have the answers when Q&A comes, okay? So one of the ways that you are able to combat this is with this simple phrase. When somebody asks you a question you don't know the answer to, I want you to say, that's a great question. And here are 3 tricks for this. That's a great question. Let me do some research on that and I will get back to you. And then do it. It's okay to not know. Walk away and find out and follow through. That's a great question. How do you think we should solve for that? 9 times out of 10, if somebody's asking you a question, it's because they already have an answer. And they want to express their opinion. So give them the floor to do so and take the pressure off yourself. And the final thing in this is, that's a great question. Does anyone else in the room have a solution to that? And then give other people an opportunity to engage so that all the pressure, again, is not on you. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to your questions. And why don't you come up first, Dr.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you.
I must say, I feel compelled to check my belt before I go any further. Does anybody have some response, replies, questions for our speaker today?
Wonderful presentation, Madison.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Bonert, and a longtime club member. And certainly, I think I know that when I saw you come up to the stage, I was thinking about using your suggestions and skills for large presentations, but it's also clear to me that everything that you have said applies to even individual meetings or small groups. Could you elaborate?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. People always want a human moment with you first. So starting in that place of sharing stories, when you share a story, you're going to spark a story back from somebody else, and then you've made a real connection in a meeting or a one-on-one. And then telling people why things matter. So often we go into these meetings and we just, again, start dumping on people before we've even primed them for why they're there or why it should matter to them. Getting them to engage in simple steps, and then giving them accurate data. It's really a foolproof way to engage people in what you need them or want them to do. Thank you.
Madison, let's say that several of us have a very important presentation that we need to deliver tomorrow. So what is one thing that you would recommend we definitely do today or tonight, and what's one thing we should not do?
Awesome. That's a great question. I do have an answer for it, though.
You look surprised.
I think one of the things I see consistently in coaching is that so many of you want to go back to that old style of memorizing everything that's going to come out of your mouth, and it really is an unfortunate thing because it turns you into a presentation robot where you hide behind podiums and you stare at pieces of paper. So my encouragement to you is memorize the first thing that's going to come out of your mouth. Memorize the last thing that's going to come out of your mouth, and then familiarize yourself with the meat in the middle. And trust that you know what you know. And if you don't know it, don't talk about it. Don't be the person standing up here, but if you do know it, then trust yourself and practice from that more conversational space. Because the ultimate goal at the end of any meeting or presentation should be to get people to want to come and talk to you more. Not to give them everything to walk away and make their own decisions from.
And our final question, James.
James Kelly, great job today. Thank you so much for delivering that. And I took notes copiously as you were just talking about. But as a professional speaker, a lot of times we give our gifts, our talents away to companies that actually, only give us a portion of what we're worth when we're working. What was it that made you decide to transition and actually go out on your own and create a niche for yourself to be able to help these companies as opposed to just working for one?
I was really inspired by my founding partner, Coleman Karleski. He had tremendous faith and belief in my ability and what I could do. And when I sat down with him and other business leaders that I knew in the community, I saw holes. I saw deficits in human capital where people really did want to rise to the occasion. They wanted to be great public speakers. They wanted to have emotional intelligence. They wanted to be great collaborators in their work environments, but they were ill-equipped to do so. And I knew that I could be not necessarily an expert on all of these things, but a great curator of all of the expert information that was out there and be able to give that to a company who shouldn't be focusing their time and energy on trying to put that together. They need to be making profits. They need to be making great decisions about moving their companies forward. So we were able to really formulate that for them in a way that felt like we were taking the pressure off. And I think it's been tremendously successful because of it and because of the wonderful people of Louisville who've engaged with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Madison Cork. Thanks everyone for being here today. Guests, remember the What is Rotary table will be on that side with Jim Watkins. We have a powerful presentation next week. Please, please, please bring at least one purse with toiletries. I know there's